They dragged a 78-year-old war veteran out of his own car in broad daylight, in front of witnesses, and slammed him to the ground like a criminal. But what those deputies didn't know was that the man they handcuffed was already working with the FBI, and by the time they found out, it was too late. Pause, slow dramatic tone. This is the true story of Leonard Whitmore, the vet they tried to silence, and the storm that followed. Watch till the end, because what happened next exposed an entire department. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon in Alabama, one of those slow golden hours where the sunlight stretches long across old blacktop roads, bouncing off pine needles and casting shadows that feel like stories from a time long gone. Down County Road 14, an old Ford Crown Victoria cruised gently beneath the tree line. Behind the wheel sat Leonard "Lenny" Whitmore, 78 years old, Vietnam veteran, retired master sergeant. A man who didn't talk much, didn't ask for much, and never stopped serving. On the passenger seat, a small brown paper bag from Cobb's Hardware rested, filled with a few odds and ends, a quart of motor oil, a box of nails, and some brass screws. Nothing special, just another Sunday chore checked off the list. Lenny wore his old U.S. Army jacket, not to show off, not to invite thanks, but because it was his. The sleeves were frayed, patches faded, zipper stuck halfway up. A second skin to the man who'd worn it through sandstorms, rain, and gunfire. He'd spent 24 years in the service, the jungles of Vietnam, Fort Benning, desert deployments. After retirement, he came back to Tuskegee, married the love of his life, built a modest home just outside Reeltown, fixed engines for neighbors, grilled chicken for church fundraisers, helped the local pastor's son with his algebra homework. He didn't post about it, he didn't talk about it, but Leonard Whitmore was one of the last living threads from a generation that knew what sacrifice actually meant. But none of that would matter in the next 10 minutes. Narrator, tone shifts subtly. He was 3 miles from home when it happened. A dusty sheriff's cruiser rolled out from a side road, falling in behind him. Lenny saw the reflection in his rear view mirror, but didn't think much of it. Speed limit was 45. He was cruising at 38. The Crown Vic had cruise control on, nothing to worry about. But then the lights flicked on, blue and red, flashing in the mirror. No siren, just light and tension. Lenny blinked, slowed, pulled into a small gas station lot, the kind that still had handwritten open signs and only 2 pumps. A few old men in lawn chairs turned their heads, conversations paused mid-sentence. A woman sipping iced tea under the awning tilted her phone up. Lenny rolled down the window and kept his hands on the wheel. Calm, trained, measured. 2 deputies stepped out of the cruiser. One, stocky buzzcut, mirrored sunglasses that made his eyes unreadable. The other, taller, younger, with a jaw so tight you'd think he was chewing stone. Buzzcut leaned in. "You know why we pulled you over, sir?" Lenny replied, "No, officer. I wasn't speeding." Gum chewer barked from the other side. "License, registration." Lenny moved slow, deliberate, pulled out his wallet, handed over the documents. His military ID slipped out with him. The deputies snatched it. "Where'd you get this car?" Lenny didn't flinch. "It's mine. Bought it new from Johnson Ford. Had it near 20 years. Buzzcut stepped back, stared at the plate, then back at Lenny. "You match a description." Lenny frowned. "Description of what?" Buzzcut stiffened. "Older black male, brown Ford, suspected stolen vehicle." And just like that, all the years, all the service, all the respect, didn't matter. "Step out of the vehicle." But Lenny didn't finish. The door was yanked open. Hands grabbed him. He stumbled, knees slamming into the pavement. A small grunt left his lips. The army jacket did little to cushion 78-year-old bones. Gas station chairs scraped loudly as people stood. Phones raised. A woman's voice rang out. "What are y'all doing? He didn't do anything." "Ma'am, step back. I'm filming this," she snapped back. Cuffs clicked. Tight. Cold. Lenny didn't resist. He'd been in worse situations. But even war couldn't prepare him for being treated like a suspect in his own hometown. They hoisted him up, roughly, like dead weight, shoved him toward the cruiser. He didn't scream, didn't protest, but his eyes, as they met the deputies, held no fear, just disappointment. Inside the sheriff's cruiser, Lenny sat in silence, watching the trees blur past. His wrists ached, his knee throbbed, his mind raced, but not with panic, with clarity. Because what those officers didn't know was that Lenny Whitmore wasn't just an old vet. He was working with the FBI. Narrator, cut to station scene. The Tallapoosa County Sheriff's Office wasn't built for heat. Inside, fans clacked lazily overhead as deputies brought Lenny through the back, out of sight from the public. "Put him in holding," Sergeant Wade Crenshaw growled, the older deputy, broad-chested, sunburned, with a scowl that stayed etched like a tattoo. The younger one, Deputy Salters, walked behind Lenny like a student scared of being caught cheating. Inside the holding room, Lenny sat on a cold bench, still cuffed, bruised, silent. Crenshaw tossed his ID on the table. "Where'd you get this? eBay?" Lenny didn't answer. "That ID's real," he finally said. "You can scan the barcode." "I don't give a damn if it's real," Crenshaw sneered. "You don't talk back." Salters laughed, but it came out hollow. Even he could tell something felt off. Lenny stared them down, calm. "I served 24 years. You don't have to treat me like a criminal." Crenshaw leaned in. "Then act like someone who earned that respect." Lenny's reply was simple, cold. "Respect isn't something you handcuff." Narrator, beat. Before Crenshaw could reply, a knock came at the door. A younger deputy poked his head in, looking flustered. Sergeant, there's a video, going viral. Some lady posted what happened at the gas station. Says y'all roughed up a vet." Crenshaw's jaw tightened. "Where?" "Gas station on 14. How many people saw?" 4, maybe 5. One was filming. Outside, the buzz was growing. Inside, the storm hadn't even started. Because what no one knew yet was that Lenny Whitmore was part of an active federal civil rights investigation. And the FBI? They were already on their way. "I followed protocol," Crenshaw said, lips tight. Reeves raised a brow. "Protocol says you body slam a 78-year-old war." Without answering, Reeves slid a frozen frame from the cruiser cam across the table. There was Lenny, mid-fall, face twisted, blood just beginning to bloom on his sleeve. Crenshaw didn't reply. He didn't need to. The silence was louder than any excuse. But outside that interrogation room, the streets were waking up. That night, Brenda's cell phone footage hit the local news. Then, it spread. CBS, NBC, The Washington Post. One headline called it another disturbing example of excessive force in the Deep South. And just like that, Lenny Whitfield was no longer just a man in town. He was the man the nation was watching. He didn't ask for this spotlight, didn't want it. But fate has a way of knocking when you least want company. His neighbor's son, Deshaun, came running just after sunset. "Mr. Lenny, you on TV." Lenny opened the door in slippers, shook his head. "I didn't do nothing special." But Deshaun was wide-eyed. "They talking about you. Your name, that lady's video, it's everywhere." Inside, Lenny sat down, barely breathing as the footage rolled. There he was, thrown like garbage, blood on the sleeve of his army jacket. The anchor's voice, Leonard Whitfield, 78-year-old Vietnam veteran, was arrested after being mistaken for a car thief. He was, in fact, cooperating with federal agents in an ongoing civil rights investigation. Deshaun turned to him. You was working with the FBI? Lenny muted the TV. They came to me, he said softly. Wanted someone who remembered what this place used to be, who still saw the same names doing the same things. Outside, a car slowed, then rolled on. Same thing happened 2 hours later. Lenny noticed. He just didn't say a word. The next morning, Agent Reeves and Agent Marquez returned, but not to ask questions. They came bearing news. Crenshaw, suspended. Salters, under review. Sheriff McMullen, forced to issue a statement. He stood at a podium at noon, monotone. There was a failure in judgment. Mr. Whitfield did not deserve to be treated that way. Not an apology, just damage control. But the town wasn't buying it. Someone in the crowd shouted, "He's been here longer than you." Another voice, "If that was your granddad, would you call it a failure in judgment?" McMullen said nothing. He turned and walked back inside. Then came the real bombshell. New documents revealed Lenny had never matched a suspect description. No stolen car matched his, no plate, no model, no reason. Crenshaw made the call off a vague tip that didn't even mention a sedan, just a suspicious black man. And then, a young deputy came forward, anonymous. He told federal agents Crenshaw had a pattern. He liked stopping old black men, said they were easier to intimidate, told us not to file reports, just say they looked suspicious. The department scrambled, but it was too late. People were. Church groups marched. Veterans in uniform rallied outside the sheriff's office. One man left a folded flag on the station's front step. It wasn't just about Lenny anymore. It was about every bruise that healed in silence. Lenny? He stood near the back of the crowd, jacket zipped, arms folded. Brenda next to him, still holding her phone. "You all right?" she asked. "I've been worse," he said. "But maybe they won't forget this one so fast." But this story wasn't over. Not by a long shot. National media pounced. A retired Army colonel broke down on live TV, tears streaming as he asked, "How long do we treat our veterans, our fathers, our heroes, like suspects?" Letters flooded Lenny's porch. Some were from fellow vets. Some were from strangers. Others simply said, "I'm sorry." At the sheriff's department, things collapsed. Salters stopped showing up. Crenshaw got fired. No press, no parade. Just a letter and a warning. Federal charges pending. Until a week later, he stepped into his small church. No stage, no microphones, just folding chairs and stained windows. He didn't bring notes, just truth. "I've been pulled over more times than I can count," he said. "Been called names, been searched, but never been thrown on the ground like I was nothing. I fought for this country," he said, voice steady, "and came home to fight, just to be seen as a man." Then he said the words that lit fire to the room. "Maybe it's not just bad apples. Maybe it's the whole tree." There was no applause, no shouting, just silence and listening. His speech, recorded on a choir kid's phone, went viral. Again. Within days, lawmakers took notice. A new bill. Mandatory body cams, no exceptions. Veterans pushed for independent police oversight boards. And for the first time in decades, people started asking hard questions. Still, Lenny kept out of the spotlight, until he agreed to one final interview, not wit, but with local journalist Tara Mendel. What did it feel like in that moment, she asked him. He paused. Ever been embarrassed for no reason? Not 'cause you did anything wrong, just 'cause someone decided you didn't belong. Then she asked the question everyone had wondered. Were you angry? No, he said. I was tired. Tired of proving I belong in the place I've lived my whole life. And finally, I ain't asking for sympathy, he said. I'm asking for memory. That interview aired the next night. No lights, no effects, just Lenny. And something changed. Police officers, quietly, reached out. Some apologized. Some said, "Thank you for saying what we couldn't." Then came the unexpected visit. A young DOJ official in a gray sedan. He handed Lenny a framed letter, signed by the U.S. Attorney General. Not a medal, not a headline, just truth, printed in black and white. Lenny mailed it to his niece in Ohio, with a note that read, "Don't hang it up. Just keep it safe. I don't need recognition. I need it to mean something." That weekend, the people of Reeltown gathered in the park. No cameras, no speeches, just lemonade, conversation, and quiet thanks. Brenda asked him, "You think things are really changing?" Lenny shrugged. "Change don't come in waves. Comes in drops, but over time, the bucket fills." And as the sun dipped low over that little town, kids played, mothers braided hair, and nobody stared at Lenny. Not because they forgot what happened, but because maybe, just maybe, they finally saw the man he'd always been. That night, he folded his army jacket and placed it gently on the chair by the door. He glanced at the empty spot where the DOJ letter could have hung. Then he nodded once to the night sky and turned off the light. Some stories don't end with applause. Some end with echoes. But this story, it's not just about what happened. It's about what should never happen again. And if we're listening, really listening, maybe we won't forget this time. If this story moved you, don't just watch. Be part of it. Tap that subscribe button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Because silence protects no one. And stories like Lenny's deserve to be remembered. Let's keep this conversation alive. For Lenny. And for every voice still waiting to be heard.